My mother refused to believe my newborn exists, turning our family into a war zone until I found strength in friends and a memorial tree. I never thought midnight could press so hard against my skull. I'm Sarah Mitchell, 29, and I live in a cramped loft in Portland, Oregon. Tonight, the glow of my laptop reflects off yellowing photographs sprawled across the kitchen island. My fingers tremble as I click through albums I haven't touched since David died. There he is, 10 years old, beaming in a raincoat, arms spread wide like he's holding up the sky. There he is at his high school graduation, tassel dangling, eyes sparkling with mischief. I pause on a shot of him teaching our niece to ride a bike. She's giggling, he's steadying the seat, and in that moment, I imagine David as the world's most patient uncle. Mark fills my silence with a soft voice behind me. Have you thought about a name yet? He brushes a strand of hair from my face, and I see the kindness in his eyes, that steady warmth that carried me through morning sickness and late-night panic attacks. What about David? He says, breath catching. In his memory, my chest seizes. I want to nod, to wrap myself in the comfort of honoring my brother's legacy. But the idea of calling my son David feels like a gamble with his identity, a weight I'd never forgive myself for placing on his shoulders. What if he grows up comparing himself to a ghost? What if his whole life becomes an echo of loss? I can't, I whisper, though it feels like shouting. My voice cracks and Mark pulls me into his arms. He doesn't push. He doesn't judge. He just holds me until I calm enough to slip free by 2 a.m. The photos are gone, and in their place lies a crisp sheet of stationery and a pen that hovers over blank lines. I settle at the table, the single overhead bulb biting into the dark corners of the room. My hand sweats as I write to my mother. Mom, I love you more than words can carry, but I need you to understand why I've chosen a different name for our son. I know you wanted David's memory alive in his name, and so did I, but not like this. I'm scared that calling him David would bind him to an unspoken promise he never asked for. I want him to know about Uncle David, to laugh at his old stories and feel proud of his bravery, but I don't want him living in his shadow. Words flow until my hand cramps. I close the letter with a fold so precise it feels like locking my heart inside an envelope. I stare at it for a long minute, as if the paper can give me courage, before slipping it into an envelope. On the way to the mailbox, the night air brushes my cheeks, and I swallow the lump in my throat. What will Mom think? I lock the mailbox and watch the white flag snap down, leaving me standing alone on the curb, the city's hum in my ears. I want her to understand, but I'm terrified she won't, and that this letter will be the beginning of a gulf I can't cross. When I return to the loft, I sink onto the floor, the empty envelope heavy in my lap. I trace the crease one last time and wonder if love is enough to bridge the distance I've created. Don't know if she'll ever read it, but I've made my choice, and now there's no turning back. I stared at the empty chair beside me all morning, wondering if the silence was louder than words. I'm still Sarah Mitchell, and 2 days ago I dropped that letter into a blue postal box under a drizzle that felt like fate's own tears. I imagined my mother's trembling hands unfolding the paper, her brow furrowing, her heart softening or hardening. But the mailbox swallowed my words, and since then I've heard nothing. No call, no text, no voicemail. My belly tightens with every tick of the clock as my due date edges nearer. I keep checking the mail slot like a child waiting for a birthday gift, but the hallway stays empty. I've rehearsed what I'll say when she finally responds. I'm sorry you're hurt. Or, I hope you can forgive me. But my throat clenches at the thought of another ghostly quiet. Tonight, we've gathered on a family video call. The screen fills with familiar squares. My mother in her tidy living room, her hair pinned back. My sister Jenna, brushing stray curls from her face. Mark's parents, smiling as if they don't suspect anything. I tuck Elliot, still measuring almost full term, against my side and draw a slow breath. Mom, I say, trying to steady my voice. I wanted you to be the first to know his name. We've decided he's going to be Elliot. Pin could drop where her face should be. For a heartbeat, her lips part but no sound follows. She blinks, forcing a small smile that trembles at the edges. Jenna shifts uncomfortably beside her, glancing between us and my mother as though she's waiting for a reaction too. Elliot who? Mom whispers, her voice so soft I almost miss it. My heart lurches. His middle name is David, I say, swallowing past the sting. We wanted to honor him without. Elliot who? Verna repeats, her tight smile cracking into something cold, hungry. She adjusts the camera, narrowing her eyes. Is this some kind of joke? A silence, heavy and accusing, stretches between us. My hand hovers over the mute button, but I force myself to stay unmuted. No, Mom, he's our son. Mom's mouth thins into a line. I see, she says, almost too quietly. She straightens a cushion behind her and without another word, clicks the end call button. The screen goes black, Jenna gasps. Mark's mother splutters, what just... But I'm already slumping back against the couch, my chest hollow. Elliot kicks and I wrap my arms tighter around him. Sarah, Jenna says, voice shaking. I'm so sorry. I nod, blinking tears away. It's okay. But it isn't. I don't speak again. We let the video squares flicker off one by one until only Mark and I remain. The room thick with questions and the name, Elliot, suspended like a verdict. My mother's rejection echoes louder than any lullaby. That night, I lie awake, replaying her cold question and the click that severed our connection. I thought a letter might bridge our gap, but instead I've carved a canyon. As sleep dissolves around me, I'm left wondering, how do you fix a bond when the other side refuses to hold on? I don't have an answer, but I know one thing for certain. Nothing will ever be the same, and tomorrow I'll have to decide how, or if, I can face her again. I could feel my body splitting in two, and not in the way the doctor had explained. Contractions hit like tidal waves at dawn. I gripped Mark's hand as the first surge rolled through me, breath hitching, eyes clamped shut. The hospital room was awash in harsh fluorescence, but I hardly noticed the beeping monitors or the antiseptic smell. All I could focus on was the ache, the burn, the promise of meeting my son after 12 grueling hours. "Breathe, Sarah," Mark murmured, voice thick with love and fear. "You're doing amazing." He cupped my cheek, kissed my temple. His hand never left mine, a lifeline anchoring me to something safe. Nurses flitted in and out. Their faces were kind masks behind surgical masks. I felt exposed, stripped of control, as wave after wave of pain crashed over me. Each time Mark counted with me. 1, 2, 3, breathe. I followed his voice like a prayer, gritting my teeth until the moment eased. Somewhere in the blur, I remembered David. How he'd squeezed my hand after my first broken heart, how he'd whispered that I was stronger than I knew. I summoned that memory between contractions, imagining his steady presence in the room. I needed him to will me through. By afternoon, exhaustion pooled beneath my eyes. My body shook. Mark refused to leave, even when the nurse offered to send him for coffee. He slid onto the fold-out chair and rested his head on my shoulder, whispering, "I love you. You're the strongest woman I know." At last, with one final push and a cry that ripped through me, a nurse lifted a pink, squalling bundle into my arms. Time stopped. I blinked through tears of relief and disbelief. This tiny human, slippery and new, was mine. I pressed him to my chest, inhaling the scent of his hair. "Elliot David Mitchell," I whispered, each syllable trembling. He settled into my arms, eyelids fluttering like fragile wings. I kissed his downy head. "Welcome to the world, my love." Mark's eyes shone with pride. "He's perfect," he said, voice thick. I lifted my phone. "Let's call her," I told Mark, trembling. "Mom should see her grandson." Moments later, Verna's face filled the screen. Only for a beat she remained invisible. Then the camera cached her empty living room, a lamp, a bookshelf, the back of a chair. I waited, heart pounding. "Mom," I said, voice soft, but the feed stuttered, froze on that empty corner. My breath caught. I tapped the screen, tried to refocus her camera. The image stayed blank. I spoke again, louder this time. "Mom, it's Sarah. Can you see us?" Silence. The only sound was Elliot's soft coos against my chest. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the call cut out. "No, good job, honey." "No, he's beautiful." Just the cold click of a severed connection. I stared at the blank screen, the hospital light reflecting off tears slipping down my cheeks. Elliot nestled against me, innocent and unknowing. My heart pounded so loud I thought the nurses would hear it through the door. In that fractured moment, I realized something. My mother's refusal to see Elliot wasn't just a screen glitch. It was a choice. I tightened my grip on my son and whispered, "I promise you, I will protect you from this." No matter what. But as I looked at that frozen frame of nothing, I knew the real fight was only beginning, and I wasn't sure I was ready. I never understood how Thanksgiving could taste so bitter. The front door swung open on polished hinges, and I stepped into my mother's foyer, Elliot wobbling on unsteady legs in my arms. He was 4 months old, plump cheeks, bright eyes, and a curiosity that made me proud. Mark hovered behind me, holding the casserole dish I'd carried through damp November streets. My mother stood by the staircase, her silver hair in a neat chignon. Her eyes widened, and for a moment I saw recognition flicker there. She managed, "Is that?" As if she were guessing at a stranger's name, I smiled, swallowing the knot in my throat. "This is Elliot." She straightened, smoothing her blouse. "Oh," she said, voice flat. Then she turned, gesturing down the hall. "Dining rooms to the left." I followed Mark past the living room where my sister Jenna was lighting candles. The table was set with china and a folded napkin at each seat, including one extra green and gold plate at the head. I swallowed as we moved around it, caught on my mother's deliberate extra place. At the head of the table, Mom sat, back ramrod straight, hands folded in her lap. She offered a tight-lipped smile. "Please be seated." I lowered Elliot into the high chair at my place setting. He banged his spoon against the tray and giggled, oblivious to the tension humming through the room. My father cleared his throat. "Would someone pass the stuffing?" Mom reached over me, past my elbow, to hand a dish to Jenna. She said nothing to me. I felt each eye at the table hold mine for 2 beats longer than polite. I caught Mark's glance, his jaw clenched. "Mom," I said softly. "We named him Elliot David. His middle name honors Uncle David." Mom's lips pinched. She lifted a fork and stabbed a piece of turkey. She only mumbled, "What baby?" My fork clattered against my plate. Turkey slid off, landing with a quiet thud. I forced calm. "Mom, Elliot, our son, he's right here." She tilted her head, as if studying a painting too abstract to understand. "I brought extra settings in case Uncle David decided to join us," she said, sounding almost pleased. I felt my chest tighten. "Mom, excuse me," she interrupted, standing. She gathered her napkin in a crisp square. "I need more wine." She pivoted on her heel and walked away, shoulders stiff. Silence filled the room. Jenna's fork hovered at her mouth. My father looked from Mom's retreating back to me, eyes sad. Mark reached to squeeze my hand under the table. I raised my voice before fear could choke it. "You can't pretend he's not here." But Mom was gone, the click of her heels on hardwood fading as she disappeared into the kitchen. In the doorway, I watched her shoulders shake. Was it anger or a tremor of something deeper? Elliot crawled off his high chair and pressed his pudgy hands against my leg, cooing. He had no idea this was Thanksgiving or family, or that I was trying to fight for his place in both. Mark cleared his throat. "Shall we eat?" I nodded, eyes stinging. I sank into my chair, staring down at the extra green and gold plate. I realized then that some people would rather set a place for ghosts than acknowledge someone real. And as my mother's footsteps returned with a heavy tray, I understood. This holiday wouldn't heal us. It would only deepen the wound. I forced a smile at the phantom plate and wondered how many more times I'd have to fight to prove my son exists. Tomorrow, I knew, nothing would be the same. I never imagined my own mother could make me question reality. My phone buzzed all morning with messages I couldn't bring myself to open, friends checking on me, Jenna offering help. I stayed curled in the nursery doorway, listening to Elliot's soft coos while the silence from my mother pressed on my chest. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I dialed her number, heart hammered against my ribs. "Mom," I said when she picked up, voice tight. Elliot's mobile clinked against my hip as he crawled circles around us. "Sarah," she replied, cool as porcelain. "To what do I owe this intrusion?" Anger flared. "Intrusion? I've called you 3 times. You've ignored all of them." A sigh bloomed over the line. "I've been busy." "I sent you photos, doctor's notes, videos of him crawling." My voice trembled. "Why won't you admit he's real?" There was a pause, so long it felt like the line had gone dead. Then Mom's voice dropped, sharp as a blade. "You're stealing David's memory. You think you can just invent a child and force me to watch?" "I didn't invent him," I cried. "He's my son, your grandson." "You don't have a grandson," she spat. "You had a brother, you had David. You owed him more than this charade." My hands shook. I sank to the floor, cradling Elliot as he patted my cheek with drooly fingers. "He's not a replacement. He's his own person. Can't you see that?" "See," she laughed, low and hollow. "I see you using grief for attention. I see a woman so desperate she made up a son to fill a void." My throat closed. "That's a lie. Prove it," she challenged. "Send me his birth certificate. Send me witnesses. Send me something that shows you didn't just fabricate this child." "I already did," I said, voice hoarse. "Doctor's office, hospital staff, everyone can confirm." "You think words mean anything?" She was mocking me now. "I won't believe him until I hold him in my arms, and you know what, Sarah? I've decided I won't." "No," I whispered, heart-shattering. "You can't do that." "I can," she declared. "I choose not to. I choose to keep David alive instead of this invention." Elliot stirred, tiny brows furrowing as if he sensed the storm. I gathered him into my arms, protective instinct flaring. "He's real," I sobbed. "He's right here." But Mom's final words cut through me like ice. "I never had a grandson, Sarah. I never will." Then the line went dead. I dropped the phone and pressed my cheek to Elliot's damp hair. His breath was warm under my skin, proof of his existence that I clung to as if it were oxygen. Tears pooled in my eyes, hot and unrelenting. My mother, my own mother, had erased him. I rocked him back and forth, whispering every reassurance I could, that he's loved, that he's wanted, that he's real. But even through my words, I heard the echo of her denial, and I wondered how long I could keep telling truth into the void before I began to believe the lie myself. Because if your mother refuses to acknowledge you, what chance do you have at all? And in the hush of the nursery, I realized I was on my own. I stared at the red light on my phone, its glow accusing. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered to the lens, shoulders trembling. My bedroom was dark, curtains drawn against midday glare. In the half-light, I pressed record and let the tears come. "Mom refuses every piece of proof. I've shown her photos, videos, doctor's notes, nothing works. It's like she's built a wall around her grief and slammed the gate in my face." I wiped a hand across my cheek. I don't know how to fight someone who insists I'm lying about my own child. I ended the recording and dropped onto the couch, replaying her last word. "Invention." I rocked Elliot in his stroller, humming a lullaby under my breath. The front door burst open before I could lock it. "Where is he?" Mom's voice cut through the house. I jumped to my feet, heart hammering. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her eyes, rimmed red, bore into me. "I want to see him. Now." She stormed past me into the hallway, arms crossed. I clutched the stroller's handle. "You can't just show up." She leaned in, voice low and furious. I demand to see this ghost child you've invented. My pulse throbbed. He's sleeping. She yanked the stroller toward her. The wheels scraped against hardwood. Open it. No, I planted my feet. You're not touching him. Her grip tightened. I gasped as she wrenched the stroller, attempting to yank it free. Elliot stirred, eyelids fluttering. Mom, stop. I lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. My nails dug in as she pulled back, fury twisting her features. He doesn't exist, she screamed, voice echoing down the hall. He's a lie you're telling to hurt me. Mark appeared behind me, eyes wide. He shoved her hand off the stroller. Back off. She whirled on him, lips curling. Don't you dare protect her. Mark squared his shoulders, placing himself between her and the stroller. Stay away from him. She stared at us both, face pale. For a long moment, none of us moved except for Elliot, who began to cry. I scooped him into my arms, pressing him to my chest. His tiny fists beat against my shirt. Mom's chest heaved. She looked from Elliot's sweet, wailing face to mine. You're a monster, she spat. I rocked Elliot gently, voice steady despite the tremor in my bones. No, Mom, I'm his mother. She turned on her heel and marched down the hall toward the front door. Her heels clicked like gunshots. At the threshold, she paused, hand on the doorknob. You've broken me, she said, voice quavering. I'll never recognize you or him again. Then the door slammed, silence stretched until only Elliot's cries filled the air. I sank to the floor, back against the wall, clutching him. Mark knelt beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I closed my eyes, tears still coming. My mother had crossed a line I never thought she would. She didn't just refuse to see him, she tried to take him away. As the front door's echo faded, I realized our family had fractured beyond repair. But as Mark stroked my hair and Elliot's soft sobs subsided into quiet sniffles, I understood. I would fight for him with every breath, because no one, not even your own blood, has the right to decide if your child is real. And now, the battle for our family's future had truly begun. I woke to the weight of dread pressing against my chest. Since Mom's outburst, we've turned our home into a fortress. Every morning, Mark and I whisper like spies, peeking through curtains before stepping outside, changing our answering machine greeting, even swapping our numbers. Friends who once dropped by now knock twice and call before entering. Elliot's nursery door stays locked, only we have the key. This morning, I tiptoe down the hall, half afraid Mom might be waiting at the foot of the stairs. But it's just Elliot, toddling in pajamas 2 sizes too big, eyes bright with mischief as he reaches for my leg and babbles, Mama. I scoop him up, heart both bursting and breaking at once. He nuzzles his cheek against mine, oblivious to the danger we imagine lurking beyond each window. Later, as Mark leaves for work, he presses a kiss to my temple. You okay? He asks, voice gentle. I nod, but the tremor in my hands gives me away. When he's gone, I sit at my desk, opening a new browser tab. My cursor hovers over the submit button on r/true off my chest. I've hesitated for hours, because this is more than a confession. It's a plea for solidarity, proof that I'm not alone in this madness. I begin typing. Title. My mother refuses to acknowledge my baby as real body. I'm 30, living in Portland, and 4 months ago I had a beautiful son, Elliot. He's healthy, happy, and the light of my life. My mother, devastated by my brother's death years ago, refuses to believe Elliot exists. She's ignored every photo, every video, and when she visited unannounced, she tried to pull him from his stroller, screaming he's a lie. I've changed phone numbers, moved routines, even installed extra locks, but the pain remains. How do you cope when the person who should love your child most denies their existence? I pause, fingers hovering over the keys. My heart pounds, then with a deep breath, I click post. Within minutes, comments begin to trickle in. I refresh obsessively, tears stinging my eyes as strangers share their own stories. A father who disowned his grandchild, an aunt who gaslit her niece's pregnancy, a friend who staged an intervention when her own sibling refused to meet their newborn. I read one aloud to Elliot as he sits in my lap, small hands patting the keyboard. You're not alone. My grandma did the same when I named my daughter after her late mom. It took setting boundaries and distance, but we're stronger now. His laugh bubbles through the room, and I let myself smile. Afternoon light filters through the window as I close the laptop. I realize I've spent years mourning the family I thought I had, and this time, I need to build a new one, starting here, with Mark, with Elliot, and with these strangers who understand. I stand and stretch, lifting Elliot to his feet. He toddles over to his bookshelf, grabs a picture of his Uncle David that I keep on display, and hands it to me. He points, coos, and I feel a warmth bloom in my chest. I tuck the photo back on the shelf and guide him toward the back door. Outside, I ask. He nods and we step into the backyard together. The crisp air fills my lungs. I watch Elliot explore, unafraid of shadows, confident in his world of grass and sunlight. I realize that while my mother's denial darkens the past, here in my arms is the promise of tomorrow. As I let him crawl under the budding for David, tree I planted weeks ago, I whisper, "We'll be okay." His tiny hand brushes mine, and I believe it, because family isn't only blood. It's the community we choose, the love we protect, and the truths we refuse to let disappear. And with that, I close the door to the past and step into the future we'll build together. I tuck a photo of baby feet into my pocket and head back inside to write a thank you reply to the strangers who helped save me and my son. The battle may continue, but tonight, for the first time in months, I feel at peace. Until tomorrow's fight. I never imagined a handful of dirt could taste like hope. I'm hunched beside the For David flowering tree in our backyard, hands streaked with soil, heart brimming. Weeks ago, I planted this sapling for my brother, his favorite blossom, the dogwood, so that every spring, its pale pink petals would remind us of his laughter. Today, I invited our closest friends to join me. They gathered in a loose circle on the lawn, gentle smiles offering warmth I haven't felt from my own blood in months. I pull my phone from my pocket and open the Reddit thread on r/true off my chest. My thumbs scroll through hundreds of comments, stories of parents reconciled by time, of mothers who finally held their grandchildren, advice on setting boundaries, messages of solidarity. One commenter wrote, "Your son, your Elliot, is a living testament to love surviving grief." Another confessed they, too, had named a child for themselves rather than an absent ancestor, and found freedom in the choice. I glance at Elliot, toddling barefoot in the grass, his chubby fingers reaching for a stray blossom. He plucks it gently and holds it up, petal trembling. My friends coo and clap softly, and he grins, then hands the petal to me as though offering a bit of the tree's promise. "Thank you," I whisper to the circle. My voice catches, but I press on. When I chose Elliot's name, I was scared it meant turning away from David. But through your stories, I see honoring him doesn't require his name on a birth certificate. My friend Diane steps forward, holding a small wooden plaque she's painted. "David's light." She secures it at the base of the tree. "He's here," she says, brushing a tear from her cheek. In every breeze that shakes these branches, I kneel and tie a ribbon Mark's drunk driver memorial ribbon from years ago around the trunk. Its silver thread catches the sunlight. "You gave me strength," I tell my friends, "and proof that family is made by love, not only blood." As the afternoon wanes, Elliot drops to his knees in the grass and starts gathering petals, tossing them into the air. He laughs when they flutter down like pink snow. I rise and brush loose hairs from my face, smiling until my cheeks ache. I think of my mother, curled inside her own grief, unable to step into this circle. I feel sadness for her loss, but no longer guilt. I've reclaimed my brother's memory and given it purpose, to teach my son that remembrance and life can flourish side by side. I bring Elliot close, his sticky fingers threading through mine, and whisper, "We did it." He babbles back, oblivious to the greater weight of this moment. Later, I'll draft a follow-up post on Reddit, updates and photos, gratitude and a question. How have you forged new traditions out of old grief? But for now, I stand in the soft glow of the setting sun, petals at our feet, family of choice around me. I understand at last that legacy isn't a name. It's the compassion we plant and the freedom we nurture. What will you choose to sow in your own garden of memory?